I'm Rick Meyer, and I am one of the national co-directors for Action with Save Our Schools. In 2011, Save Our Schools had a big march and rally in Washington, D.C., and from that we gave birth to many different groups. My day job is I'm a professor at the University of New Mexico in language and literacy, and I teach courses in family literacy, research, teaching of reading, teaching of writing, and other literacy-related classes. My activism goes back to my childhood. I'm Jewish, and the first rally that I was at, that was a national rally. I lived in New York, and I took a train to Washington, D.C., where we protested in the park across the street from the White House about the way Jews were not allowed to leave Russia. And from then forward, I've been involved in different capacities. I was involved in the anti-war movement, the peace movement, involved tangentially in the women's movement, and just have been an activist my entire life. About 2 or 3 days after the first group of people met with Save Our Schools, Bess Allworder contacted me and said, pretty much we found a good activist home for ourselves, and that indeed was the case. And so it's been a lifelong journey for me, and probably will be till the day I die. There are $600 billion to be had from public education. These are direct tax dollars that will go into private companies, and so through a series of very complex and very well-crafted manipulations, the public has been convinced that our schools are failing. But what's really failing is the economy. The economy is failing to cater to the people of our country, and that's a moral obligation of corporations, which they have bracketed in order to increase their profits, reduce the number of workers that they need to employ because of outsourcing, automation, and different things like that. And bottom line is, they just don't need as many workers as they used to. And when you look at the broader picture of what's happening in housing, what's happening in nutrition, what's happening in the health movement, all of those are fundamentally about profit. And even when you get sick, it's for someone else's profit. And if it's not worth it for them to treat you, they let you die or get worse. A prime example is a student of mine who's a grown woman and a teacher and has MS, and the healthcare plan that she's under just cut the most effective drug for her from her repertoire of medications, and so she is deteriorating at a rapid rate. And that's because they weren't making enough money. And so this is really part of a larger movement, and I would argue it's the response that we're taking may appear political because it has to be, but this is a moral movement. Human beings are entitled to certain things. Sam Anderson said during his speech that we are the only species that pays for its food. That is a profoundly important statement, because what we can buy in terms of food helps to separate the classes even further. The poor get poorer diets, poorer health care, poorer education, and so this is about money, fundamentally about money and greed and control. The right-wing groups together are working within a common ground to undermine our democracy and to try to equate capitalism with democracy, which they're not the same at all. United Opt-out is about democracy, and it is about family members, parents, and guardians having an important say and control of the children in their family. That is a fundamental facet of democracy. And what's happening now is schools are being manipulated and trained in ways to teach parents that they don't have that right, or to try to bracket that right. The idea of having an educated public is fundamental to a democracy, and when we get things like the Common Core standards, the bigger lessons are things like compliance, that we have that the goal of the Common Core is really about teaching teachers and children to be compliant. That is antithetical to what a democracy is all about. We are not about having everybody on the same page, reading decontextualized speeches that seem like important moments in history, but the Common Core says don't contextualize it. So texts get reduced to a collection of words. Something that I do with my students when I teach them about how we learn to read is I will use a nonsense word and say, you have a flurgle on your arm, and I can ask them questions about a flurgle, and they can answer it correctly, they can tell where it's located, but the reality is there's no deeper meaning to it. And so this is about semantics in the most theoretical and philosophical sense. Semantics is about meaning. And the current trend is to take deep meaning away from what it means to be a citizen.